So, if you remember the 90s as something more than just grade school, you will recall that there was a conflict in Bosnia-Herzegovina that caused a lot of damage to people and property. I'd say that the conflict in Bosnia was pretty horrific, and the scars that were caused by that conflict remain to this day. In 1995, the various warring parties, even though they never technically called it a war, signed the Dayton Peace Accords. And NATO was handed the responsibility to enforce the peace process that those accords set in place. And so what they did was they set up a sustaining force, also known as S4, in which the U.S. Army took a major role by providing several thousand troops across the whole landscape of Bosnia, probably in 10 or 12 different places. In 1998, my company was assigned tasking to go provide the voice and the data communications capabilities to the U.S. Army in particular so that they could communicate across Bosnia as well as to the grander command structure for the U.S. Army in the United States and for the NATO command structure within Europe. In 2000, S4 built a command base outside of Sarajevo, which is the capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina, so that the politicians that were trying to put Bosnia back together could cooperate a little bit closer with the command structure of S4. And I was assigned the responsibility to go lead the installation team. This was in the summer of 2000. It took us about a month. It went pretty well. In 2001, we were going back to upgrade the capabilities that originally installed in 1998. 3 years is a standard technical refresh cycle for IT capabilities. So I was again assigned the responsibility to go and lead the installation of the voice and the data communication capabilities across the whole swath of Bosnia. Now, I don't know what it's like at this point in time, but there were no 4-lane roads in Bosnia except for the major thoroughfares in the major cities. So if you wanted to pass somebody, you really needed to get into the oncoming traffic. So in this particular day, I was driving from Eagle Base, which is outside of Tuzla, if you know what a map of Bosnia-Herzegovina looks like, down to Sarajevo where the international airport was, so I could pick up Jim and Brent, a couple of senior engineers coming in to be part of a rotation. And the reason why we're doing this rotation is because the installation didn't go as well as planned, and so we were there for the better part of 6 months, and we needed to rotate people in and out so that nobody got burnt out. Jim and Brent were senior engineers. Jim actually, in fact, my company basically said that whoever was the longest in the company wore the yellow jerseys, kind of like the Tour de France. So Jim wore the yellow jersey for our company and was coming in. So now I picked them up at the Sarajevo airport and we were headed back. And now I'm not a complete prick on the road. Okay, maybe I am. But I am perfectly willing to get into oncoming traffic and pass. And on this particular day, it was raining. I was driving a Toyota 4-banger that was kind of underpowered. The tires were kind of balding. It was uphill both ways. There were 4-foot ditches on either side of the road, and we were we were sitting behind one of these underpowered trucks. I got itchy. I got itchy. So I decided to go ahead and try to pass, and we literally were going uphill. Unfortunately, as we got to the top of the hill, I will point out that truck A is right here and truck B is coming up over the rise. So I haven't finished passing truck A, and I'm pretty close to running into truck B. I could see it, I made a mistake, but I think it was a pretty good piece of driving that I did to get back behind that truck, not go into one of those 4-foot ditches, and not kill us, quite frankly. In the grand scheme of things, though, we were back behind truck A. And truck B went gone. We were happy. So it was about 15 minutes later, and at this point, I'm back to my assertive driving. I'm passing cars left and right, but I was eager to boast about just how good of a bit of driving that I had done. It was deathly silent in the car for a while because, well, maybe deathly is a bad choice of words, but nobody really wanted to argue with me. And then, then they let loose the dogs of war. It's just like, oh, you were wrong. I can't remember exactly what the specifics of the conversation are 17 years later, but let's say it made the last couple hours of driving back to Eagle Base go a little bit faster. Now, once we got back to Eagle Base, it had been a number of hours since I had left to go down to Sarajevo. And when I had left, the security at the gate was pretty loose. There hadn't been a security event in Bosnia in a number of months, and so it was pretty loose. But when we got back, it was tense. It was tight. They made us get out of the car. They checked underneath the car with that mirror on a long stick. They made us go through X-ray machines. We emptied our pockets. They patted us down. Most importantly, they all had their fingers on the triggers of their M16s. It was tense. Now, we kind of surmised that the Army basically staffed the Bosnia effort with Army Reserve troops, and they rotated those guys out every 6 months. And there was a rotation that was going on. And so we surmised that, well, there's a new sheriff in town. He wants to make people understand that we're not going to take any shit and whatever. And it worked for us. We had no idea. So now, once we finally got through the front security, we were hungry. It had been a number of hours since we had eaten. There's not a McDonald's on every corner like in Bosnia like there is here. So we went to the dining facility. We went through the line, got our food, came out. And that's when we noticed that every table in the entire dining facility, people were sitting on one side of a table, but not the other. And they were all looking at that little teeny tiny TV that sat in the corner of the dining facility. I said earlier this was September of 2001. If you haven't figured it out by now, this was September 11th, 2001. So we were all watching the Twin Towers fall over and over and over again as they showed it repeatedly. They shut us down from working a little bit for a couple of days because they didn't want to lose their communications capabilities while the security situation was so tense. But in the grand scheme of things, after a couple of days, they turned us back on. We finished probably by the end of October, and we were all able to come home. Me, most importantly, because I concern myself with me. In the grand scheme of things, though, I'm glad that we didn't actually die that day for two reasons. One, I've been working for my company since 1986, and I didn't want my legacy to be that I killed the guy with the yellow jersey in those days. And second, I was glad that my wife didn't have to have this discussion over and over and over again over the years. Your husband was killed on 9/11? Did he die because of the terrorists? No, he died because he was driving like a terror. Thank you.